Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Latte on the Cloud Cost, a podcast that guides you through the complex world of cloud cost optimization. I'm your host, Praneet Chandra, and every 2 weeks, we deep dive into strategies, tools, and best practices that helps FinOps professionals, engineering leaders, and DevOps team like yours navigate the financial aspect of cloud computing. In today's episode, I have a guest who comes from a solid engineering DNA, right? Move to FinOps, focus not just on cost optimization, but also about how do we get the entire team together on FinOps, right? His talks are brilliant. If you have not subscribed to it, I'll talk more about it, right? Please welcome Dvir. He is VP of FinOps at Wiv.AI. I hope I got that right, Dvir. And Wiv helps companies use automation to cut costs and enforce governance. He has built up and scaled FinOps practices at large companies like Wix in the past. And you should hear his talk definitely from FinOps X 2024, taking FinOps to the next level beyond optimization. And the good part, today's topic is also beyond optimization as well, right? Um, so to just count on some of his achievements, I think that will be really small. Like he's deeply embedded within the FinOps community, a brilliant voice, somebody whom I'm subscribed to. I like to hear all the thoughts and sharing some real world examples and leading practice. So welcome there. Great to have you today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm blushing. You can't see it, but it's there. Thank you so much for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here, and I really appreciate you having me on your podcast.
Great, Dwyer. We will just recap for everyone some new things that we have added on this format. Going forward, we'll not just have questions, but we'll also have some rapid fire and some cloud confessions as well, right? I thought like let's jazz it up a little bit. Yeah, it's always like you have asked way too many questions that people have answered. Let's jazz it up, right? So going forward, we are gonna jazz up our whole podcast series as well, where we'll have some cloud confessions, right? Let's ask what sin Dwyer has committed, right? And also some rapid fires. And that would be the whole part, right? As usual, please like, share, and subscribe us right on the different channels. And with that, let's just start. Ready there for the show?
I hope I am. Super excited.
Great. I think one of the things that I would want to start today's conversation is right. It's the evolution of FinOps. I think both you and I were discussing in one of our calls, right, how it has grown in last 10 years from cost-cutting size to strategic business lever and now becoming enabler at different functions, right? So how do you position FinOps as a value driver, right? That accelerates innovation rather than a function that prevents overspend. Because what I feel, if you think about procurement and finance, they're always like, yeah, are you spending on the right thing? No, cut this cost, right? So how do you position FinOps, right? What is that value driving piece that you feel that all of us should really understand? Yeah.
So this is a great question. I think that the role of FinOps, let's start with that, is not to prevent overspend. I think that one of the main challenges in FinOps is the ability to understand how your cloud is behaving and what is the value that your investment in the cloud brings to your business. So it's not about how much things cost in my book, like what a FinOps should focus on is how much engagement you have from the different teams to run more efficiently. And as a driver, I think that you shouldn't talk with engineers or with the people in charge of making the bottom line change about costs. They should be talking about engineering efficiency. And I think this was my most of my voice and most of my terminology that I used back at Wix. The ability to talk with engineers in their own language and create this common language that they won't be. I don't think that we can make them care about costs, but I think we can make them care about working much more efficiently and to better design how the business should run in a more efficient way. And I think it's a lot of the terminology that is being adopted today in the community because people stopped talking about cost as a driver and started talking about value and impact as a driver. So when we enable innovation in the engineering team, I'll give an example though, something that I did at Wix. When we give engineering teams the constraints, which is one of the I think my favorite sentence in the FinOps Foundation framework, like constraints lead to innovation. When we give them those constraints, it's no longer about making an engineering story because if there are 10 ways to solve a problem on the cloud and two are cost efficient, our goal is to highlight those two with the engineering team. And one example that I did back at Wix 2019, I think it was the ability to understand how we can improve our performance in our website building platform. So for those of you who don't know, Wix is a website building platform that gives the ability to build sites. And we wanted to improve the performance of users handling sites. Now, we could throw money at the problem, right, to improve the latency, to improve the content delivery framework and caching solutions that we've built. But it was interesting to see that it wasn't just the task of, reduce 19 milliseconds per time to first byte. It was reduced to a 19 milliseconds time to first byte, that we used a unit of economics that each millisecond shouldn't cost more than X dollars. And that drove a really cool conversations engineering wise about how to solve that problem with this constraint.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is having a shared vocabulary with engineering definitely takes it far, right? And efficiency over
Yes.
cost any given day. I think that is factually correct, right? Like, I think when you think about the value driving for customer, right? And I think all of us are biased for like get more efficiency out. When you can tie that efficiency back to dollar value, I think that's where everyone's, oh, yeah, that's a great moment. I think that's a great nugget. And so if we really think about metrics, right? Let's say you talked about like efficiency as a metric, right? So what are the metrics that you think beyond cost savings that truly matter? Like as an organization, as an engineering leader, as a FinOps leader, I should really count on. Yeah.
That's an interesting question because we've been asked that a lot, not from this vertical, but from how do you measure a FinOps value,
Yeah.
right? So everyone's saying like the initial saying the key or primary goal is the cost reduction that it brings. From my perspective, I think it's only a derivative of the job we do. I think that we should focus on metrics. And again, based on my experience, the cool thing to measure is, for example, the level of engagement. Like how many teams are we working it internally in the company? How many in the pre-design or design phase actually contacting us in a proactive way? So the level of engagement is something that I measured back in the day to measure our value. Like maybe we didn't save in this team, but look at how much engagement they have, being proactive about and conscious about their costs. So this is one metric that we can measure. And the second one, which is an interesting metric for me to measure as a FinOps engineer, is the operational overhead reducing. Like how can we reduce operational overhead when working with the clouds? And it kind of connects with what I did back at Wix when I built my own DIY solution for cost. And what we're doing today with the ability to automate a lot of the operational overhead for FinOps and for the engineering teams for discovery, inform, optimize, and operate, and the ability to do that at scale. So let's call it the time to remediation metric. So how long since we find an inefficiency to the time that we have to remediate it, and how can we improve that time frame? Make sense?
It does a lot of it. I think this time to remediation is something that I think I keep on telling people, like it's not always about finding inefficiencies on infrastructure, but like how conscious you were to like figure it out. Okay, if this is something that is really stifling something, let's go and fix it. Right. And
Can I say something unpopular,
yeah,
maybe? I think finding waste is super simple. I think that, in today's, I'm not talking about like 8 years ago or 9 years ago. I'm talking about today. Finding waste, I think it's very straightforward. I think it's very common. Like, I think there is no FinOps tool. Even the cloud gives you
yeah.
recommendations on where to optimize and where to look at. So this is what I'm saying. Like, you shouldn't only measure the cost impact of the actions that you do as a FinOps practice. You also need to make sure that you're doing it better over time.
Agreed. I think that's totally true, right? I think we are sitting in 2025 where, yes, there are so many different ways to identify cloud cost, waste, and other things, right? It's like, okay, how do you really remediate it at a faster, like you said, right, time to remediate, the efficiency, the process around it. I think that's so valuable, right? And that takes me to an interesting perspective, right? I was talking to an engineering leader last week on a very similar lines, right? And one of the things that he was talking about is, yes, I understand all of this and I want to build a cost-centric culture. I was like very happy, like, oh wow, somebody telling me that beforehand. But my challenge is my team resists because they feel like it is going to bottleneck the innovation, right? Because I will not be able to go aggressively experiment on new models or experiment something new as such. So how do you envision the framework for embedding FinOps on this innovation process, right? Or in the development lifecycle? I think you have done a very similar thing at Wix, right? What you have been telling me. So how did you build this whole FinOps or thinking, the process, or the mindset, like for a better word, right, into this development lifecycle? How would you do that? Yeah.
I think the initial phase was, as I said, to move away from cost
Yeah.
metrics. And this was the initial thing that we did when we realized that we're talking about budgets to engineering teams. Like, I don't care. And like, what is the actual remediation on your overspending? It's like, I'm not going to shut down my service, it's serving users. So we had to think about another way. And I think that when we started using, I really love this sentence. Like, we started asking them, like, you wouldn't write wasteful code. Why would you run in a wasteful environment? And it wasn't enough. So, and I also talked about it a lot previously. I don't know, honestly, I'm saying, I don't know how a common language is not like a main issue with FinOps practitioners. I don't know why it's not a challenge anymore. I know that even for me today, after 8 years, is still a very urgent issue to solve. Like, what is the right terminology? What is the right language to talk with both finance and engineering teams? And I'm super happy that a lot of organizations already solved it because we don't see it in the state of FinOps. But common language is really important. And once you figure out the common language specifically to your organizational culture and the engineering culture, the second thing that we realized after failing miserably is you can't do it as a side quest for engineers. Like, it can't be in a separated ecosystem. You can't expect engineers to get out of their ecosystem into your FinOps pipeline and then go back to their engineering pipeline. So this is one of our aha moments where we realize that if we don't integrate both processes to the same pipeline and use the same tools and use the same methodologies that the engineering are using, we can't integrate this practice into their day-to-day. So this is exactly what we did. We took their task management platform, and we took the engineering pipeline, and we took the post-mortem and incident management and everything, like their terminology about how to handle cases,
Yeah.
kind of shifted to cost as well. We treated cost anomalies and cost incidents the same as production incidents. And I think that kind of changed the mindset because no one really wants to be in charge of a production incident, right?
Yeah.
So this was the mindset, and this is what we're trying to preach as well here today, is the ability to talk with engineers the same language, integrate with their own pipeline, and make sure that it's seamless, the integration of FinOps into their day-to-day. Make sense?
It does. It does a lot of sense, right? And I've got like two questions on it, right? One is you had a lot of learnings, right, in this part. So if you have to redo it again, would you first go and build a shared vocabulary with engineering team, or would you first go and figure out, right, hey, these are the things that we are doing wrong, right? So how do you like? I think I'll come to my goal, right? So when you tell people, right, hey, let's build out a shared vocabulary, they're like not interested. Why are we building this, right? Does it have any use? Or the second thing is you show up like a lot of issues and then you go, that's why we need to have vocabulary, right? So those are like two methods. So if you have to redo it again, how would you do it and what would it look like? Like so that I can make my engineers genuinely care about cloud economics, right? It's not just about like superficial, yeah, it's part of my job, tick box exercise, but how do we do it? Yeah.
That's a great question. And I have to be honest, there is no one single answer that is globally true.
Okay.
As I said, it heavily depends on the culture of the organization. Let's take, for an example, an enterprise organization with, let's say, a lot of disciplines in multiple engineering teams across the different organizations. Each one of them might have a different language. Each one of them might use different services or serve different purposes. And I think that there isn't one solution. I think that you have a lot of soft skills there. And I think that what separates like a good FinOps that can track waste and can create reports and can create dashboards into a great FinOps that can understand and invest in people and understand like what their challenges, what their concerns, how to approach that and how to solve that. It doesn't require technical knowledge. It requires a very, how do you call it, emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Sorry, I lost my voice
N-
there. Okay, 1 second.
I know it's such a touchy topic. Yeah.
I'm so excited though. Too. It's very emotional for
Yeah.
me. No, I'm joking. I think that it takes a lot of emotional challenge to understand people needs and how to drive them into action. So you have to understand what type of persona you have in front of you
Hmm.
and what makes them click. And for example, for one engineer, it might be let's try in a positive way to think about a more innovative way to do so. Let's investigate multiple tools. Let's talk about innovation. That might be its driver, his driver. Or you can go to a different engineer and ask her, for example, how do you want to approach it regarding visibility? What kind of information you're missing in order to complete that
Yeah,
picture? So it's an enablement conversation. You always try to understand what kind of information is missing, what is driving them to succeed, and what is the criteria of success in their eyes, not in your eyes.
correct.
So a lot of politics, a lot of soft skills, and I think this is the right approach because that way you can tailor your own approaches or your own methodologies to different teams that work differently.
Great. And I think this is something I've heard before, right? And I'm going to commit to it, right? I've been product manager for a large part of my career. And I think whenever
Okay.
somebody asks what's the secret sauce for being product manager, a successful product manager, I always told the same thing, right? So product managers and FinOps professionals, you're very look-alike, right? At this point of time, right? So all that matters is how well you can get people to sing the same tune, right? And that involves a lot of emotional intelligence and everything. Totally agree to that. And I think that's why I could like very seamlessly navigate into world of FinOps, right? So yeah, okay. I got some bonus points for myself. Yeah. Great.
I mean, if great minds think alike,
Yeah.
then we can say that this is the right
Yeah,
answer.
exactly. That is the right answer, I would say at this point of time. Yeah. Great. So, one thing I like to think about, right? And this is, I've been thinking, right? I've been like heads deep down reading about generative AI, a lot of predictive things that are happening as such. What do you think the moment would be for predictive FinOps? What would predictive FinOps look like? And I know it's far left field, and this is something that I've been trying to think very aggressively, right? What would the world look like with predictive FinOps? Because I still see teams looking their monthly bill, getting onto anomaly detection, right? But it's all the damage is kind of done, right? Partially, sometimes completely, but the damage is done. So how do we move from this reactive or what do you call the urgency state to like being predictive, right? About FinOps, about the process and the tooling as such. So what are your thoughts on it?
So this is a big question. I'm going to separate my answer to
Yeah.
two, if that is
Yeah,
okay.
that's all right. Yeah.
So I guess the first part would be actual proactiveness. And actual proactiveness is before provisioning to the cloud. That means that you're not, the whole FinOps process should be based on with the teams on the design phase and the feature phase to be, as you said, part of that product,
Yeah.
part of the design of the architecture, understand the constraints of the business, what we need to serve, who are we serving it to, and to understand, like as I said, what is considered a success for this project. And once we have those metrics in place, we have our assumptions, and then we can either build the budget for that specific agenda, or we can escort this project into the cloud provisioning and understand what happens when assumptions meets the reality. So the first part would be the ability to create a cultural change in the organization to make sure that everyone's aligned with your vision as
Yeah.
well, to make sure that everyone's wants to integrate that FinOps process and your insights. So you're becoming less of an enabler and more of a professional that they consult during the design process.
Yeah.
This is the first vertical. I think that proactive FinOps should be, we called it back in the day, a seat at the table. So the idea that we can sit with the architect, the idea that we can sit with the relevant stakeholders that are in charge of the roadmap, understand like what is in store for us
Yeah.
this year, understand what kind of features we want to get, and to sit with the relevant stakeholders in the design phase when they decide to develop this feature. Give your inputs, give your 2 cents, escort this project, understand the architecture, not like in the technical deep dive way, but in the holistic, budgety
Yeah.
way. Let's do a ballpark that says that this is your constraint and let's try to keep it. So this is the first phase. This is my first part of the answer. Like what's happening before the FinOps process. I don't think there is any tool that will be able to do so. I think it's, as I said, most of it will be soft skills
Yeah.
and people person, and like investing in the people and the culture of that organization. Let's move to something that we can
Yeah.
control. The second phase, this is post provisioning, or when assumptions meets reality. I think that proactive FinOps, and this is something I've said, I think, in the last 5 years, shouldn't focus on cost at all.
Correct.
Because the difference between focusing on cost, which comes best case scenario 24 hours after it happened, to utilization. And this is something that I actually played with a bit before leaving Wix to Wiv. We actually started talking about chaos engineering for
Oh,
FinOps,
wow.
and to understand what kind of pitfalls are open to shifts in business, to increased user activities, and the ability to understand where can, or even from security side, where can attacks can increase our bottom line. And we implemented utilization metrics monitoring to understand what would be the biggest cost impact based on the different services. And again, this is something that we actually do today at Weave. Sorry, I'm not trying to,
Yeah.
but just as an example, one of our customers, and again, if that's not okay, we can drop the
That's
example.
totally fine.
But
Yeah. Please go ahead.
okay, I don't want to. I just want to talk about
Yeah.
FinOps, but this is really a cool use case. So one of our customers heavily use CloudFront, a CDN
Yeah.
service that delivers traffic to their content to their users, and they had a problem where like every other day they get like a DDoS, or they get like an attack on their sites, on their own company sites. And we implemented a bytes downloaded metric alerting system that tracks like on the half an hour basis, like what is the traffic and anomaly detection if there are any additional spikes based on the 95%
Yeah.
of utilization for the last 14 days. So to reduce even seasonality, or like a weekend versus a weekday. And we kind of caught a lot of like attacks when they happened, and it went back directly to the engineering teams using their task management system in order to make sure that everyone's aligned with this is what is happening now. Let's investigate immediately if we need to block some IPs, if we need to mitigate it in some kind of way. But they were aware, so they didn't
Yeah.
wait for the, let's say, the $100,000 invoice at the end of the month or 2 days later. They tried to mitigate it as almost as soon as it happened. So I think proactiveness should shift from cost into utilization, and to understand where your pitfalls are.
Hmm.
So it's not just understanding how your provisioning system would look like, because human error is still a factor, but to understand like what is external and what external forces can force your infrastructure to scale up, and to track those relevant utilization metrics to make sure that you're aligned with the expected behavior and you're not seeing any additional spikes in real time using the monitoring systems, because it's in a minute or an hour kind of basis
Yeah.
instead of like a 24-hour
I
thing.
I think you hit a very solid point over there, right? Can I start linking my usage utilization back to how it's going to impact my cost? Because you don't have to wait for cost and usage report. You understand number of API calls, you understand number of bytes downloaded, right? And that also, sorry, I'm gonna add another question because you just gave me a brilliant place.
Go
I think I'm
ahead.
gonna first of all rename this episode called as Chaos Engineering Meets FinOps. I think that's a apt title for this one, right? And the second thing is, you have given me brilliant example how we can use data to prevent cost overruns or even like the efficiency that goes down. What are the other data points that you think we should proactively think about? And again, I understand this might differ from company to company, but in your experience,
Yeah.
right, what kind of data points that we should leverage in order to make these kind of decisions, right? And like these are not just cost implications. What I feel is also like infrastructure stability, customer experience, right? And it spans so much,
Exactly.
right? So can you give us some more examples of what kind of data pointers we should always look for? My fellow engineers would love that. Yeah.
Sure. Like the immediate suspects with everything related to API requests. So if you're using, for example, S3 to serve your content, if you're using any other object storage that you can track the access patterns, then you should, and traffic. Because traffic usually let's say, for example, I've seen a lot of organizations trying to understand the desired capacity of their skill sets in Azure or like scaling groups in AWS. And I think this is the wrong approach, because if you're tracking your desired capacity in your auto scaling group, that means that the instances were already provisioned. And I think it's much easier to track, for example, the traffic in to your cloud environment, and to see if there are any spikes there, because usually there is a correlation between how much traffic you're serving and the number of resources you need to scale up to serve that traffic. So traffic would be immediate. To see a spike before your instances are being spun up, make sure to track and this is interesting because traffic in costs no money. So most organizations don't even track it, but I think it's like the immediate indicator that something is wrong in your environment, like you're getting a lot more traffic for some reason. So before scaling up infrastructure, before making sure that your load balancer costs are increasing, before making sure that all your infrastructure, again, is being able to serve that increased traffic, the first point you have to track is the traffic in. And I don't think anyone really, like a FinOps engineer, doesn't really think about monitoring free services that doesn't cost you.
Exactly. So you are saying
So
bytes in,
request
yeah, so you're saying bytes in, data ingress, all of these are like, should be our leading indicator as compared to lagging indicator, how we treat, if I'm hearing it correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I eventually think about it from the architectural side. Like, let's say you have even a shared tenancy workflow. Let's say you have a Kubernetes cluster handling customer requests, just as an example. So you can track the requests you get from the cluster. You can track the number of cores that you have. You can track the number of instances or nodes that you have in the cluster. But it's easier to track if there is an increased traffic into your cloud environment. So it kind of catches immediately, really immediately, an event that really required you to scale your infrastructure up. So I think that will be the first, let's say, entry point of monitoring. And then, as I said, everything that is related to usage-based, that means requests, even operation, if you're using heavily on EBS to serve your customers, even the number of IOPS on your disks, to see if there's any spikes in your shared environment. Anything that is customer facing, that means that anything that might be impacted by multiple users outside your organization that might need to increase your infrastructure. I'm sorry we diverted heavily into the engineering discussion, but you
I
asked.
think this is what is missing, right? Like we have not digressed. I feel like FinOps is so much integral part of engineering. And this is, you can call me, I'm preaching like a lunatic, right? But I preach like this to everyone, right? That engineering and FinOps are not two different teams, right? If you think that FinOps Center of Excellence should be sitting somewhere outside, no, it should be sitting right within your engineering and infrastructure teams, right? And that's where the right part is, right? You don't make QA team because they are testing software, or tech ops sit somewhere far and not interact with your engineering. All of us have to come together and do it. So I think it's not digressing. I think we are probably pressing the right button, right?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, everyone's talking about chief left, but I don't think they mean what I think it means. Like, everyone's talking about moving FinOps practice into engineering teams, and I was like, no, you should move FinOps to engineering. Like, engineering teams should be the FinOps practitioners, not to implement engineering practices in FinOps, although this is also cool.
Yeah, I think this is what happens, right? Like this is very classic thing if you look at the software industry, right? We earlier had SysOps and TechOps, right? Then we created, oh, there's something called a DevOps, and the goal was engineers should be able to handle their own infrastructure, right? But then what we did? Oh, we created a new job role. Right. And then we had a bunch of people doing DevOps now. Now, that's the same thing with FinOps. Yes, you need somebody to lead the charter, somebody to be like the guard of this charter, similar to program manager, but it has to be embedded into engineering. Otherwise, it won't work. Yeah.
To be honest, I wouldn't use a guard. I don't think it's a gatekeeper of FinOps. I think that a centralized FinOps practice should set the guidelines, and a distributed practice should practice FinOps. So I've seen a lot of organizations, let's say, for example, they have like 2 FinOps or 3 FinOps team for like a $200 million organization. As good, like as much good intent that they have to manage that cloud spend, they can't. And what they need to do is to set the guidelines, SCPs, like policies, what should be maintained, and agree with that with all the products. And I think that the distribution of practice should be like the goal of any FinOps team. It shouldn't remain in FinOps, but we need advocates for each engineering team to be able to take those guidelines and distribute them to the team members so everyone can be part of that game.
Agreed. I think I would probably improve my words, not being a gatekeeper, but more of a guardian of the entire process, right? Something like that, right? Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's where it should be. So let's take our con.
Let's call it the high authority. The high
Oh
authority.
yeah, high authority, somebody above this room. Yeah, great. No, I think we can get all those fancy terms. I don't want to introduce a lot more new job titles. I think we are done with a lot of them, right? But some,
Do you know how they called me at Wix
yeah.
back in the day?
What?
It was the Game of Thrones era, and everyone called me Master of Coin.
Oh,
So,
good one,
so
good
this
one.
is my.
I
And since then, by the way, this is a true story. And since then, every convention that I go even
yeah.
reinvent, like my title is Master of Coin.
Oh wow. Okay, that's really interesting. That's really cool. I would say it's very innovative as well, right? Great. So let's zoom back a little bit more, right, on what you do on day-to-day basis, right? So one thing I always have challenges is crawl, walk, run model, right? I do not see that every company fits into this classic crawl, walk, run model, right? How do you measure FinOps maturity beyond these three words or the phases as such? What do you think?
So I'll start again with an unpopular opinion, if that is
Yeah.
okay. I don't believe in the crawl, walk, run model. I think that it gives or sets different expectations for different cultures in different organizations. And I think that a lot of examples with the crawl might be run for different organizations because not every organization is built the same. And I think it creates some kind of an idea, right? Like the Appleton idea, like the what is the best FinOps practice and what we should do. And it makes FinOps engineers to try to reach that goal instead of understanding their own organization challenges. So I think when you measure FinOps maturity, is the ability to maintain your FinOps practice at scale.
Mhm.
And it shouldn't be about a specific service or it shouldn't be about a specific team that you work with. Is the ability to make sure that you have everything under control, you have everything in the design, you are able and not a bottleneck, you're not a
Yeah.
blocker for agendas or business agendas. And I don't think there is a single metric that you can measure to understand FinOps maturity. It might be very mature for that specific organization. You know, if we're talking about like a large
Yeah.
enterprise with a lot of teams, it might be very mature to just do a showback. And, you know, for them, it's like a huge success. And to tag it as a crawl phase, I think it kind of it demoralized the FinOps practitioners to saying like, I can't succeed in doing additional run
Yeah.
agendas. So I think, and again, I might be in a minority opinion here, but I think it kind of sets different goals for teams that aspire to reach there, but they can't because of organizational
Yeah.
policies. So I think they should measure their maturity based on what they can do in the organization, not what any other organization might have done. Make
Yeah.
sense?
That makes a lot of sense. In fact, that reminds me of my season one, the very first episode I recorded with Rakesh, who was FinOps lead at Invesco. He said that
Okay.
we do not measure our organization on crawl, walk, run. What we have literally done
Yeah.
is there are like 20, 25 business units and we measure them individually where they are, right? Because as an organization, we are like humongous. We are like 7, 8,000 people working on this piece, and we can never be, not every department can be on same stage. Few will be like leaders, few will be laggards, and that always happens. So having that single term, and I keep on asking this question, hey, why do we have to box on crawl, walk, run, right? There has to be something more, right? Because it's not like I feel it's more as being agile, right? Agile is a great practice, right? But not every company's agile practices, principles remain same, but practices cannot be the same, right? And I think that is how we should start
Perfect
treating.
example.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, that's a perfect
Yeah.
example.
So that takes me to another favorite question of mine, right? What does world-class FinOps practice looks in your point of view? And again, I don't care about rest of the market viewpoint, the books, the best of guidelines. What do you think it looks like from your viewpoint? Because I think that might be your lot of your day-to-day role at Wiv, right now, where you talk to customers and everything. And I try to build that point of view, and I feel like yes, but I want to hear more, right? What's your point of view? What is world-class FinOps practice? Yeah.
It's a tricky question. as I said, because there might be multiple right
Yeah.
answers. But for me personally, I've been doing FinOps for more than 8 years now, and I've tried multiple disciplines. I started with Inform and dashboards. I moved to engineering and
Yeah.
waste. But I've been consistent, I think, for the last 8.5 years about automation. And I think a world-class FinOps practice today, or not today, because I don't think the market is mature enough to handle an automatic FinOps
Yeah.
pipeline, but I think we're getting there. And you can see it, by the way, in the state of
Yeah.
FinOps. I think 21 to 23, the top challenge or the key priority for FinOps practitioners was to creating visibility on
Yeah.
costs in some term and another, but it was in the inform area. Consistently 2024 and 2025, the key challenge in the state of FinOps by the FinOps Foundation for any practitioner in any company
Yeah.
size is reducing waste.
Exactly.
It's the number one challenge, and I think that organizations and FinOps practitioners are starting to realize you can't do that manually,
Exactly.
regardless of any inform platforms you might have, regardless of any recommended. Like I've seen a lot of organizations, and again, the same as I did with my DIY tool.
Yeah.
It's not related to the platform or any tool, but I've seen a lot of organizations creating like hundreds of thousands of
Yeah.
recommendations. Like how can you approach that with engineering teams? And when we talked about blockers, and when you talk about how not to stop
Yeah.
innovation, this is it. Like you can't just throw a Jira ticket with like 200,000 cases of you have detached DBS volumes. I'll go and see what you can do about
Yeah.
it.
I,
Makes
yeah,
sense.
it does.
So I think that the world will move and is moving to automations. It's also an increased priority in the priorities list. And I think that the world class FinOps practice, like when we talk about maturity, is anything that you do today manually can and should be automated.
Correct.
And this is like my core belief in FinOps since I started this role.
I think that's totally correct. I think we have some previous examples, right? If you look at support, if you look at QA, right? It is not always about number of support tickets created or number of issues raised, but like mean time to
Exactly.
resolution or like, oh, how has your time to resolution improved? And that had brought in so much automation in these two industry. I think FinOps is right heading over there, right? So yeah, that's what I'm hoping for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is why I joined Wiv. This
Yeah.
is the this is exactly why I think this is why I wanted to be part of what we're
Yeah.
doing today.
I built a startup just on this thing, right? Getting engineers to take action. That's what we built out. And I think the whole thing was this, right? It's very easy to show the problems, right? It's so difficult to help people to really solve it. And I think we have a
Yeah.
brilliant opportunity. I think it's not just about being functional or technical, right? Hey, can you really help? Can you really help the fellow engineer, right? Resolve it faster, resolve it for better. I think that's a win that all of us should really look for. Great. So that was all my questions, right? It's time for some fun, right? Are you ready, Dvir?
I'm
Yeah.
focused.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm ready.
First thing, share me a bitter truth, right? And I want it really harsh, right? About FinOps that rarely gets said out loud, right? All of us know it, but none of us say it. What is that one thing about FinOps?
Oh, okay. I have one.
Yeah. Oh,
I think so many unpopular things. I think dashboards is a waste of time.
amazing. 100 points to you, and you won.
Yeah.
Great.
I just think that no one's talking about it enough because eventually you can have the most beautiful dashboards and not a single engineer look at it.
I
Or you have zero action items taken from that dashboard.
I
So
agreed. I have a very favorite thing, right? And I go into a calls, right, where people tell like, hey, we use this and we use this to monitor. And I'm like, how many of you actually know how to build a report on Cost Explorer? Raise your hand. It's
yeah.
so tough, right? Like, and even if you know it well, right, you have to think about it. And then once you start thinking about building a report, you drop an idea. Okay, I don't want to do this, right? So I think
Yeah.
correctly said, building dashboards is so 80s. That's what I would call it, right? I think we're in 2025.
Okay. Can I add something
Yes,
more
please.
about when we talked about my with my manager like
Yeah.
previously at Wix, and he said like I want you to build a dashboard for this team so they'll know how much cost they have. I was like, and It's like, so they know what to do. And it's like, how? And it's like, I don't know. I mean, they'll see their services, they see what costs more, and like, but
Yeah.
I mean, eventually the conversation has to move forward from what is shown in the dashboard into what we need to do with
Yeah.
that information. And I think the next questions are much more interesting than to show people like how much their workload is costing.
Agreed. I so much can agree. I've been part of some of those enterprise companies where we had 9 BI tools and we were using
Yeah,
it for all for different purpose. Like every team, oh, finance team likes Tableau, so they bought Tableau for something else. And engineering team likes Power BI, so they bought Power BI. And I don't know why. Like we could not get to that.
right.
Imagine if you cannot have consensus on BI and dashboard tooling, how can you even have consensus on dashboard? So yeah, all
Exactly.
yours? Yeah, this is like wow, this is like a great reflection moment for me. Cool. Now I've got a rapid fire round, right? There are five rapid fire questions, right? You have to either answer with one word or one line answer. That's it. No discussion, right?
Oh, okay. No discussion.
Reserve
Great.
instances or savings plan.
Definitely saving plans.
Why?
You said one line. Okay, I'll give you one line. First of all, because of the rumor that Amazon is going to reduce reserved instances to Ash. But even if that's not the case, saving plans give peace of mind. You have all those limitations about RI marketplace today, and you can't really change convertible RIs or sell them in the marketplace. So I think that Amazon is moving to saving plans, and it kind of gives you a lot easier and less complex manageability on your reservation portfolio.
Oh wow, that's great. Yeah. I think I also have a brilliant idea while you were telling that. I think I would just start something called a FinOps gossip where we can understand all of this. Oh, AWS is removing RIs, somebody's introducing a new SPs kind of thing.
Yeah.
Great. One word for multi-cloud.
Terrible. Uh, I'm so sorry. Terrible. I would elaborate a bit more about that. Like if each cloud has its own unique,
Yeah,
like best service, like Google
yeah,
BigQuery, like it's an amazing service. So only if you need to work with those specific like top tier services, do
yeah,
it. Otherwise, it makes your engineers support two different stacks. It makes your organization pay for two different
yeah,
bills. And that complexity of moving, even if you have some kind of an hibernation or a wrapper around your
yeah.
logic, it's still a very complex architecture. And I don't see the benefit of separating like half pricing and half discounts instead of getting 100% discounts based on your scale in one cloud. So for me, it's a terrible
Great.
way.
Editor, please cut this whole thing. I just want it to be terrible, terrible. Several times flashing on the screen.
Terrible.
Terrible. Ah, my favorite one. Tagging, salvation or chaos?
That's a tricky question because tagging is an instrument and it depends on how you use it.
Good one. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you got me over there. I was like, I was,
Like if you ask me a hammer, is it good or not? I was like, are you building something amazing? Are you trying to, I
I
don't
was
know,
looking for
pull
other
water?
controversy.
Probably not ready.
I was looking for other controversy. Oh God. Okay. No problem.
I'm so sorry. I'll try the next
Yeah.
one.
Most overrated FinOps buzzword.
AI.
Oh God. This is fun.
AI. Definitely AI. I think that a lot of people are using AI for FinOps, FinOps for AI, and no one actually can elaborate on what they want to achieve with what we, on opposite of what we have today. I think it's overrated today because everyone's using it as a
Yeah.
buzzword. I will think it might be very integrated with FinOps practices moving forward in the future.
And I
But
think
today is
the
very much.
principle doesn't change. In fact, I was writing a small blog post. Probably I will be able to finish it pretty soon because a lot of people have asked, right, how are you thinking about FinOps getting used in AI and those all things? And I was like, again, it remains the same. What is actually
Yeah.
number of tokens that you use per business metric, right? Per chat.
I mean, the show back then, it's just another FinOps practice,
Ex-
the same as
ex-
cloud. So we're not innovating anything
exactly.
here. We actually, on a side note, we had a very interesting discussion in the FinOps Israel community. We had like a roundtable with, I think, dozens of
Yeah.
people that talking about how AI will impact FinOps in the future and what can you do with it. And most of them ran out like, yeah, I'm going to write a script that will go to Cost Explorer and generate a report for me. It's like, that's not what it's supposed to do.
I think it goes,
So my two cents, I think we're still investigating the value of integrating an AI with FinOps, Even in our company, like we have our agent, we have everything here. But again, the actual value, the action items, the things that you can do in your combine your business logic with a FinOps logic and make a rational and informative decisions, we're not there
Yeah,
yet.
and I think
So
it's going to be like, sorry, I'm jumping over here because I can see some of the future, right? It's going to be very similar. Like you measure IOPS on your desk, you measure number of Lambda invocations, you should start measuring number of tokens your business process takes. And potentially it might not replace humans at few of the places. It might be even more expensive. So let's figure it out, right? That's one. Next one,
exactly.
FinOps tooling, build or buy. I know, you cannot say buy. You have to say build. Sorry. Go ahead.
I've done both,
Oh, wow.
right? I've built my own
Yeah.
tool. I bought FinOps
Yeah.
tools. I think it heavily depends on the problem you're trying to solve. And I think that if your problem is very isolated, you should build. I know I'm shooting my leg here, but if that's something that is very
Yeah.
isolated and you're trying to solve a problem, build. If you're trying to build a framework for FinOps in your organization, definitely buy. Definitely. Like looking back at the last, I think I was at week 7.5 years, about almost eight. I expanded my tool hundreds, not hundreds, like dozens of thousands of lines of code.
Wow.
That was for me completely unmaintainable. To add new features was a complete disaster. And again, we used it as a framework. So if you're trying to solve a very isolated problem, build. If you're trying to get a FinOps platform, like a FinOps framework to work with moving forward and to scale your FinOps practice, buy.
Great answer.
Again, it doesn't matter which tool you're buying, just make sure that that tool that you're buying solves the relevant
Yeah,
problems that you're trying to solve.
great. I think I've got another one, but not for this one. Probably I'm gonna cover what does a RFP for a FinOps tool look like, and potentially a separate podcast that is also on my head. I need to get that sorted, but I'm gonna come to
No
you, Dvir,
worries.
for that. What does a RFP for a FinOps look like, right? And the last one, you got to finish this sentence. Cloud bills are getting
Irrelevant.
great answer. That's it.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Oh, so again, you are passing with full 100 marks. I don't have something. I'll send you some virtual gifts today for doing this. And thank you, Dwyer. That was amazing. Like, I think I never had so much laugh in last 5 to 6 days. I've been like deep down, as I told you, right, doing some reports and those all things. But this was really good. This was really amazing conversation. I think our engineers friend, our FinOps friend, our engineering leaders, right, who struggle with day to day, like getting their teams, cost-centric culture and everything. I think we have busted a lot of myths today. So thank you, Dwyer. Thank you for coming on the show, and it was wonderful to have you. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. I had so much fun. So thank you for that.
Great. And thank you everyone for listening in and tuning into the Latte of Cloud Cost. As usual, right, we come in every 2 weeks. Hope you had fun. If you've got any comments, again, I would say you should listen to Dwayne's talk on FinOps X 2024, Beyond Optimization, right? It is worth it. There's so much gold in there, right? I think I can record a separate podcast just discussing about that whole thing. And this is fantastic, right? So stay tuned and until we meet again and signing off. Thank you.